This is what it sounds like. This is what it looks like. This is what it feels like when the church is alive. Sing that out again. Oh, this is what it sounds like. Yeah, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like when the church is alive. For our hope forever is the name of Jesus. We are free. You are with us. The church is alive. Yeah, our hope forever is the name of Jesus. We are free. You are with us. The church is alive. Oh, this is what it sounds like. Yeah, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like when the church is alive. Oh, yeah, this is what it sounds like. Yeah, this is what it looks like. This is what it feels like when the church is alive. You guys go ahead and have a seat for a few minutes. Leslie, come on up.
Thanks, guys. Okay. I love the words of that song that say, our hope forever is the name of Jesus. We are free and you are with us. That is really good news for us to start our day with. Amen? But I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. Whether you're joining us online and checking us out there or you're in the room with us, we really hope that the next hour that we spend together is going to be a time that helps awaken you to the presence of God and to the freedom available in Him, and that you can just rest in that today. We're really glad that you're here with us and you chose to spend some of your weekend with us. If you're new around here, thank you. Thank you for joining us, whether you're joining us online or you're here. We'd love it if you'd let us know that you're here. And the best way to do that right now is to text us. We're going to put a number up on the screen. You can just text "hey" to that number. We'll text "hey" back. We'll send you a little link to a short form where you can just let us know your name, email address. We'll send you an email this week to say hi, introduce ourselves, let you know a little bit more about who we are as a church. We also have a gift for you. If you're new around here and you haven't picked up your t-shirt at Connection Point yet, John and Lisa are in their bright orange shirts. They will be thrilled to give you a t-shirt after the gathering back in Connection Point. Head back there after the gathering. The t-shirt's really awesome. I see them out in the community all the time. They say, "For our neighbors." This idea of being for our neighbors is something that's really important to us around here, because we believe that when a big group of people all endeavor to live like Jesus and learn from Him, it's going to not just affect them and this church, but our communities, so the people around us. One of the ways that we've been for our neighbors recently is collecting for the Cause portion of Concert with a Cause. You guys know that we're gearing up for our annual Concert with a Cause in a few weeks, and we've been collecting Pop-Top soup cans, or Pop-Top pasta, both of those have been coming in, to support our backpack food programs in all of our local school districts. These programs are ones that help send home some food over like the weekends or the breaks in school for kids who may not have access to consistent meals, so that they fill the gap like that. And last week, Brian was here and he reported that our total was 350 cans. Which is good, except our total is 1,500 cans. And I was getting a little nervous, if I'm honest with you guys. Not so much because I thought we wouldn't meet the goal. We always end up meeting and exceeding the goal around here. I love that about this church. The problem is we sometimes are a last-minute kind of people, you know what I mean? And Jeremiah told me at the very beginning of this whole thing that whoever's teaching each week has to bring all the cans back to the office, and I knew I was the last week, so I was a little nervous. But I showed up to the office to drop something off on Wednesday, and I could not pull my car into the carport because there were so many boxes of cans that people had dropped off through the week or mailed in. So by the time we finished counting all of those, we stood at 1,423 cans. And I know several have come in already today, so I am totally confident that we're going to meet or exceed that goal today. But if you wanted to participate in this and you haven't had a chance to yet, you can still ship those to our office. Anything that arrives to us by July 9th will get counted and included in the total that we'll announce at our Concert with a Cause. Now, speaking of that concert, historically we have always held our Concert with a Cause on July 4th weekend, but this year, July 4th falls on the Sunday itself. And we were looking at that. We knew that was going to make it really hard on our volunteers and teams to be able to pull that together. And we know many of you wouldn't be able to join us on that day because of either family or community commitments that you already have. So we made a decision that this year we are going to cancel gatherings on July 4th. So no gatherings here or in Farmington next week. But instead, our concert will be July 11th, 2 weeks from now, at our Farmington facility. We're going to have 2 identical concerts at 9:30 and 11 o'clock. So if you show up here at 9, totally forgetting what's going on, you have 30 minutes to get to Farmington, so you can still make it. And we will have Go Kids available at both of those, full Go Kids program there. You don't want to miss that. You do want to miss next week because we won't be here. But 2 weeks from now, July 11th, in Farmington, Concert with a Cause. If you've been following along in our Summer in the 573 thing and watching the calendar, you know Concert with a Cause is kind of the middle point of all of that. We've had a lot of stuff that's already come and gone, and we have several things on the other side of it. Now, between now and Concert with a Cause, we had a couple of Big Night Out events scheduled. Big Night Out, something we do a couple times a year for married and engaged couples, a chance to connect, laugh together, get to learn a little bit more about being intentional in our marriage. We have one of those tonight here in Fredericktown at Dave and Shanna's house. Hopefully, it's not going to rain on us, Dave. We'll see. But we're going to do that regardless. And that registration for that one is already closed. So if you missed out on that, you're missing out, and I'm sorry. But I have good news for you if you did miss out on that. Farmington, the Farmington Big Night Out, was originally scheduled for last night. And then, unfortunately, there was an unexpected funeral that happened that affected several families that were going to be a part of that, including our hosts. So we postponed that event. So it is now happening this coming Friday night. So Friday, July 2nd at 6 p.m. in Farmington at Tim and Kara Rob's house is the Farmington Big Night Out. And because we have a little extra time, we reopened registration. So if you're one of those couples that you couldn't make it this week, but next weekend on Friday night would work for you, registration is open right now. It'll be open now through tomorrow night at midnight, I believe. And the best way to register for that is go to our app or our website, click on Summer in the 573, look for Farmington Big Night Out. There'll be a link there to register. It's $15 per couple. It includes dinner for both of you, games, some fun together, and I just have to say, Tim and Kara Robs are some of the most amazing hosts. They definitely have a gift for welcoming people into their family. So if you've been kicking this around, you hated that you couldn't be a part of it this weekend, but you can make it happen Friday night. Make sure and register for that today or tomorrow. Got it? Okay. Now, I love the set that the team has prepared. I've been listening to these songs for the last several days, and they have been just like a breath of fresh air to my soul. So I think you guys are going to enjoy those. I'm going to hand this back to Jenny and the band. Take it away, guys.
save my soul. You're never gonna let me go. Oh, and I'm so forward, and I can't hold back. No, I can't contain for all He's done. Jesus, my Savior. I am blessed and full of thanks for His love breaking through my heart of stone, love breathing to wake my bones, love reaching out to save my soul, love never gonna let me go, love calling me as I am, love making me new again, love lifting me when I can, love never gonna let me go. Wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever you've just come as you are, come into His open arms. Wherever you've been, whatever you've done, whatever you've just come as you are. Come find His love breaking through my heart of stone, love breathing to wake my bones, love reaching out to save my soul, love never gonna let me go, love calling me as I am, love making me new again, love lifting me when I can, love never gonna let me go, love breaking through my heart of stone, love breathing to wake my bones, love reaching out to save my soul, love never gonna let me go, love calling me as I am, love making me new again, love lifting me when I can, love never gonna let me go, love never gonna let me go, love never gonna let me go. Wherever you've been and whatever you've done, just come as you are. Come into His open arms. And wherever you've been and whatever you've done, just come as you are. And come find His love. Isn't that an awesome thought? Wherever we've been, whatever we've done, there's our Heavenly Father with arms wide open. You guys go ahead and have a seat. I was giving the band a chance to go ahead and head to the back. When I was growing up, there were a few constants that were in my life, stuff that I could pretty much always bank on. Number one was that at one point or another, we were all going to wind up at my grandmother's house for a meal. Whether it was planned or whether a few of us just kind of showed up there and then Grandpa got on the phone and called everybody else to come over for supper, it didn't matter. We were all going to wind up at my granny's house for a meal. That was one pretty much constant in my life. It took me watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the movie, to realize that we were one roasted lamb in the yard away from being Greek. I mean, that's kind of how we were. I mean, that was about the only thing that was missing was that going on in the front yard. And that was such a blessing to me. I'll never forget that. As those impromptu meals around my granny's table. The other constant was Jesus. I grew up in a Christian home. I don't take that for granted a single bit. I'm thankful every day that my parents showed me Jesus. And then the last constant in my life was music. All the time. If I was happy, I played music. If I was sad, I played music. Broken heart, I played music. That was one constant in my life. And it took me going through some trials as an adult to realize that music spoke for me when I couldn't speak. I could be so tired and so down and so weary that I knew I needed to pray, but I couldn't even find the words to utter a prayer. And my mind and my heart would recall a song, and I could sing it or hum it or listen to it, and I used that as a prayer because I knew God heard it, because that's exactly what I was feeling in that moment. The same with joy. I've been so happy that I can't even find words to describe how blessed and how happy I am. And a song will do that for me. I don't know if that's how anybody else is, but that's what music does for me. When we come together like this and we sing and we worship, that's what music does for me. It has spoken for me so many times when I didn't have the words to speak it myself. And I had been humming or referencing this song I'm getting ready to sing for you this morning so many times over the last couple of weeks, and I had no idea why. I had no idea why. I like the song. I mean, it's a great song. I love Lauren Daigle. She's amazing. I mean, so that's, it's a great song. And it amazed me how just when I needed it, this song would come to my mind, to my heart. Maybe just hum a chorus of it. But I'm so thankful that songs like this speak for me on days when I can't. And I don't know what you're facing this morning. I don't know what you're going through. Maybe you're going to listen to this song this morning and you're just going to like the words. Maybe it's just going to be a pretty song that you hear, that you enjoyed being in the presence of God this morning and listening to this song. Or maybe you're going to find yourself referencing this song or any song over the next couple of times this week because you don't know what you're going to face. You don't know what's happening. Maybe you're so full of joy that this song is going to be that for you this morning. I don't know. But I pray with all of my heart that we listen with our hearts to the words of the song this morning. Because it is absolutely what my heart is speaking today. God, I give you what I can today. These scattered ashes that I've hid away, I'll lay it all at your feet. And from the corners of my deepest shame, the empty places where I've worn your name, show me the love. I say, I believe, and oh Lord, I lay it down. Help me to lay it down. Oh, let this be where I die, and my Lord with thee crucified, and be lifted high as my kingdoms fall once and for all, once and for all. There is victory in my Savior's loss, in the crimson flowing from the cross. Pour over me, and pour over me, yes. Oh, let this be where I die, and my Lord with thee crucified.
Father, I pray that whatever we walked in here carrying that feels too heavy, that right now we would lay it down, that we would release our grip on trying to control the situation, and remember that you can handle whatever it is, that you're the God that never lets us go. Father, as we begin to breathe and breathe out whatever it is that we're carrying, I pray that we would breathe in you, that we become more aware of your presence, of the fact that you are for us. And God, open our hearts and our minds to hear what you have to say to us this morning. We love you. Amen. Well, guys, like I said earlier, I have been listening to that set all week long. I always try to look at the songs ahead of time, but they just stuck with me, and I just kept listening to them, and I could feel my shoulders kind of relax. The longer I listened to them, that progression of ideas and truths about who God is were so deeply meaningful to me this week. Because if I'm honest with you, it's been a really heavy week. And I know for many of you it has as well, because I've talked to a lot of you this week who are carrying some pretty heavy stuff. And that song, those sets of songs coming in the middle of this week, it was a gift to me, because it reminded me over and over again of God's goodness and who he was, and that I didn't need to fix everything because God could handle it. And I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the team, for the work that they put into that, for Jenny for choosing those songs, and I'm grateful to God for the truths contained in them. And I just wanted to share that with you guys today, but I also wanted to hear from you. I'd love to hear from you guys about what you're grateful for this week, because I think it's important that we practice gratitude, and so I'd love to just hear, what is it that you're grateful for this week? Were there any things that happened, little or big, that just reminded you of who God is, or of his presence, or his goodness? I'd love to hear from a few of you. Just raise your hand if you've got something. Somebody's pointing. Oh, yes. Grateful for having the money to be able to go and do. That's good. Thank you. Anybody else? Sharon?
Well, we just got back from vacation, so
A lot to be grateful for on vacation, yes.
for safety and travel, first of all.
Yeah.
Traveling across the Dakotas and all of that, and looking at the wonder of God's creation, and driving through all of those fields, crops, everything, thinking about how blessed we are in this country, all the food that is provided by this country for our own, by the farmers for our own country and around the world. Just God's provision for us, it's amazing.
Yeah, the beauty of God's nature and his provision. I'm someone who connects to nature, connects to God through nature as well. Anybody else? What are you grateful for this week? Elaine.
I was out by myself watering everything because I had multiple bodies of water in my yard. It was getting dark and the fireflies were just in abundance. And for just a moment, I was really thankful for fireflies. It signified more, but it was just the beauty of that peacefulness
Yeah.
of the life that we have in the midst of crazy and busy and hard and everything else. That just being really thankful for my husband, children, and our home, and fireflies, and just the peacefulness
Yeah.
of that on a summer.
I love that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes God surprises us, right? In small moments with unexpected things that remind us that he's with us and that he loves us and helps us see life in new perspective. So thank you guys for sharing that with all of us. I think, like I said earlier, I think it's so important that we practice gratitude. And there are a ton of ways that we can do that. We've already done several of them today. We can sing songs to God in worship that help us express our gratefulness to him like we did earlier. We share, like we just did, in community, the things that we're grateful for. It helps encourage not only ourselves, but the other people in our community. And we can also give out of gratefulness. We do that both to people in need, like we have through Concert with a Cause and the Pop Top Soup collection, and also giving back to God through the local church. And so we want to, as always, give you an opportunity to worship in that way this morning. So if you came prepared to worship in that way, go ahead and grab your phones. Around here these days, most people are giving digitally. Many of you have automated your giving online already, and we're very grateful for that. But if you like to give in the moment, in the gathering, go ahead and grab your phone, and you can do that through our app. Or if you're joining us online, you can do that through the giving link in the comments. And then if you're more of an analog person, we always have offering envelopes, buckets by the doors. You can prepare those and drop them off on your way out after the gathering. But I want you to think about doing this as an act of gratitude this week. Giving is an act of gratitude out of an awareness of what God's given to you and giving back to Him. And as you do that right now, I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. I'm going to transition to the message, and before we start talking about our topic for today, I have a trivia question for you. I'm wondering if anybody knows this. Does anybody know what the longest running game show in TV history is? Any ideas? I'm hearing The Price is Right. That is not it. Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, no, none of those. No, not Family Feud. It's actually Let's Make a Deal. Has anybody heard of this? Let's Make a Deal. It's been on the air for 58 years, guys. Since 1963. It started with Monty Hall there, and now they've gone through several hosts, but it's still on the air today. And it's crazy to me because there are people whose parents weren't even alive when the show premiered, who are getting on the show, dressing up in crazy costumes, just like they did back then, for a chance to win some cash or a washer and dryer set. And when they do, that's when the show gets really interesting, because that's when the host offers them the deal. Basically, he'll say, you can keep what you've got, what you've already won, or you can trade it for the thing in the box or behind curtain number 2. And then, of course, they open the box or the curtain if they make the trade, and they might get something like a Tesla, or it might be like a goat or a donkey, which if you've seen the show, they call that getting zonked. And it's crazy because I looked into this. You don't even get to keep the donkey. So it's a total ripoff. It's a terrible trade. My kids are really disappointed that you don't get to keep the donkey. We're going to come back to Let's Make a Deal in a little bit, but today we're going to wrap up our Art of Relationship series. We've been talking for the last 4 weeks about how our closest relationships flourish when we begin to practice certain relational arts on a regular basis. And we talked about practicing the art of being all there, staying present to our friends and family in the moment, the art of intentionality. And then last week, Brian talked to us about one we don't think about all the time. It was the art of risking awkwardness in our relationships. But today, what I want to talk to you about is not something that I want you to do or add to your relationships. Today, I want us to talk about something to stop doing. Because sometimes the truth is, the game changer in our relationships is not something we add to it, it's something we let go of, something we give up. And to do that, if we want to deepen and strengthen our relationships, I think the key, and what we're going to talk about today, is that we need to practice the art of letting go. We need to practice letting go on a regular basis. We're going to take a look at a story from the life of Moses today. And I think most of us are probably pretty familiar with Moses' highlight reel. He's the guy who, led the people of God out of slavery and into the promised land, parted the Red Sea, delivers the 10 Commandments. He also later, of course, had his life immortalized in an epic 4-hour masterpiece starring Charlton Heston. So if you have some time on your hands this afternoon, I would highly recommend that one. But before all of that big stuff happened, Moses was basically a nobody. As a baby, he had been adopted into the Egyptian royal family, but then a whole bunch of stuff went down, and that blew up on him. So he finds himself in the middle of nowhere, herding sheep for 40 years. And then one day, this amazing thing happens that kind of kicks off this whole season of ministry and all of these great things Moses gets to experience and be a part of. God starts speaking to Moses through the landscaping, which is a super weird thing to have happen. Basically, there's this shrub that's on fire, and it's not burning up. And God is speaking to Moses through this shrub. And God tells him that he is actually the one who gets to lead the nation of Israel out of slavery. And of course, Moses is really blown away by this whole burning bush thing. But there's one problem. Like he's not down with the plan God's laying out here. So he immediately starts telling God, no, I think you've got the wrong guy. It's not me. Like I stutter. I'm not a good communicator. I'm not the leader type. Seriously, it's not me. And as Moses is like rattling off his whole list of excuses why this cannot be God's plan, God interrupts him with a question. He says, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," Moses replied. And the Lord says, "Throw it on the ground." Now, this may sound like a pretty minor detail to us, but that's probably because none of us are shepherds, I'm assuming. I mean, I know we have some hobby farmers in the room, but like, I'm assuming your life, your whole livelihood is not based on shepherding. But back in Moses' day, a shepherd's staff was a pretty essential tool. In fact, most of the time it was probably his only tool that he had at his disposal. It was used to poke and prod the sheep to make sure they went where they needed to go. It's how they got the wayward ones back in line and kept the flock safe. A shepherd's staff was also the way that they were able to fend off wild animals who were looking to snack on some of his sheep, or, even the shepherd. So if you're a shepherd in Moses' day and you found yourself without your staff, you were in trouble. You had no way to control your sheep. You had no way to ward off predators. So a shepherd without its staff was pretty much as successful as a carpenter without a hammer. Like he was out of luck without this thing. And while shepherding wasn't exactly like a high-class profession, at this point in Moses' life, it was pretty much all he had left. So God asking him to lay down this key to his livelihood was no small thing. See, I think God knew that if Moses was going to step into his calling and become the kind of man that God had for him, live the kind of life God had ahead for him, he had to practice the art of letting go. And I really believe the same is true for all of us. So as we wrap up this series today, I want us all to get honest with ourselves about what it is we need to let go of in order to experience what God has for us relationally. I think there are all sorts of things. I think you're probably already thinking of things you need to let go of in relationships, because there are all sorts of things we may need to let go of that keep us from experiencing what God has for us in our relationships. But today I want to talk about one specific one and focus in on it, because I think it affects so many of the others, and it's control. Control. Because I think the truth is control is something we probably all wrestle with in relationships in one way or another. Sometimes it kind of seems like we're almost hardwired to struggle for control from birth. I know I saw this in my kids so early. They were so strong-willed just as babies. And I remember this one time, it was my youngest's first Christmas. Somebody had given him a Noah's Ark set that he was playing with. And it had all sorts of little plastic animals in their pairs to go on the ark. And of course, he's like 10 months old at this point, so him playing with this is mostly him throwing the animals or chewing on them. But he loved it. It was all he wanted to play with that Christmas. So one day, the boys are in the living room, and they're playing with all their new gifts, so I took this opportunity to just step into the kitchen, get dinner started, all of that. And then the next thing I know, I hear Lincoln screaming bloody murder. So I run back in there to try to figure out what's going on, and his Noah's Ark toys are nowhere to be found. And he's crawled over, and he is angry, and he's wailing on his older brother with all his little tiny baby fists. And I'm like trying to assess the situation, figure out what happened here. And I look at my 3-year-old, I'm like, "Elliot, did you steal his Noah's Ark toys?" And he's like, "No, I did not steal them. I fixed it for him." And then he shows me this. Can we get that picture? That's my oldest in a nutshell right there, all lined up, ready to go on the ark, because that's the way he likes things. And what's funny to me about this story is that almost 4 years later, those two are still wrestling for control with each other in like the same exact ways. One of them just gets angry and he fights for control. And the other one tries to micromanage everything his little brother does. It's just what they do. They're wired this way. So, of course, trying to be a good parent and really intentional in this moment, I sit my 3-year-old down, and I'm like trying to help him understand. Listen, I know you think you helped him here and that he wants this, but really what you're trying to do is get what you want, and you like things just so. And if you really want to develop the kind of relationship with your brother that I think you're going to want and appreciate later in life, you're going to have to realize he's his own person, and let him make choices about how he wants to play. And I'm not sure if he gets any of this, but I feel better as a parent having had the conversation. So I head back into the kitchen to finish alphabetizing my spice drawer. Because clearly it comes from somewhere, and I have my own deep-rooted control issues. Because I think we all do. We all have these things that we want to control in our lives, and it affects our relationships. And I think, it's easy to look at somebody like my son who wants to line up his toys, or me who alphabetizes her spices and think, oh, that's just control freaks. We're just a bunch of control freaks. But I don't think that's it. Control is not actually our goal. The goal is getting what we want and need from people. That's what we're after. And when we're not getting what we want, we find ourselves resorting to all sorts of controlling behaviors. Sometimes it's the negative stuff like criticizing, comparing, guilting, shaming, silent treatment, anger. But it's not always negative stuff. We also use positive things sometimes. Sometimes we use things like praise or affection, and we twist them, where we offer them up when somebody does what we want them to do, and we withhold them when they don't. And when we get at it, the root of all these things is control. It's us trying to manipulate and control another person. And there's nothing wrong with us trying to get what we need. But when we resort to these controlling behaviors, not only is it not going to work long term in our relationships, it's going to keep us from ever experiencing the kind of deep, mutual, life-giving relationships all of us want. Control is at the root of so many things that affect our relationships that we need to let go of. For example, I think about resentment and hurt. I think it's easy to not think of control when we think of resentment and hurt. If anything, we feel resentful and hurt when we feel like somebody's been trying to control us, right? But when we hold on to the pain of how someone's wronged us, and we let that ruminate, and we let it build in our minds and in our hearts, we begin to feel like they owe us, and they need to make it up to us. So then, in relationship with the person, we find all sorts of little ways to remind them of what they've done to try to get them to change and do what we want in the future. Or maybe the person comes and confronts us about something we've done that upset them. And instead of us owning that and having the conversation, we immediately remind them of how they did the exact same thing or even worse so that we can invalidate what they've done. Hurt and resentment are just feelings that we feel. If we hold on to them, we begin to use them as tools for control and manipulation in our relationships. Now, as we always do around here, we want to look to Jesus as our model of how to handle things and how to be in relationships. And in so many ways throughout his life, Jesus modeled what it looks like to give up control when he was hurt. We see even when he was on the cross, when he's enduring the pain and the loneliness of being betrayed by the very people he came to save, look what Jesus said. He says, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." He was intentionally letting go and forgiving. Instead of choosing to hold on to bitterness or resentment, which, gosh, I think any of us would feel like he was justified in that moment to do so. Jesus lets go of control. And he chooses instead to trust in God's goodness and his plan in this moment. And if I want to have the kind of relationships that I deeply want, the kind of relationships that last and are life-giving, then I need to be following his example and actively, intentionally, regularly letting go of things like hurt and resentment that I'm holding on to. And maybe you're thinking, like, if I don't do that, what do I do? Like, that's just been a pattern for so long. What am I supposed to do? Just, say nothing? Let it keep happening? And I got to tell you, this is something I am in remedial learning on. I am learning right along with everyone else. And these are patterns I've seen play out in my life for a long time. But I want to share with you something that's been really helpful to me as I'm trying to learn to let go of control in my relationships. Jesus said one time, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you." And I always heard that talked about in the context of prayer, and it is about prayer. But I recently read something where the author pointed out that it's also a model of how Jesus wants us to be in relationship to other people. Jesus is basically saying, request what you want. Ask. Talk to them. When you're trying to get what you want, don't use insults or threats or guilt or flattery. Ask. Seek. Knock. Request is at the heart of community. And a request is the opposite of what it looks like to control people. It sounds really simple, right? Just ask for what you want. So why do we never do it? Why do we never do that? Why do we not start there? I think it's probably because it's risky, right? Like if I show up and I ask for what I want, they can say no. They can say no. I think this is why we talked about getting awkward last week before we talked about letting go this week. Because asking can be really vulnerable. I'd much rather just tell somebody what they should or shouldn't do or guilt them into going the direction that I want them to go. It's a lot safer sometimes to raise my voice or turn on the emotional pressure or bring up the past in hopes that they're going to change and do it differently this time. But being the kind of person who simply asks for what they want in relationships, it's kind of new territory for most of us. That's why I was telling you about Moses earlier. I want to go back to Moses. For Moses to experience the kind of things that God had for him in his life, he had to become the kind of person who could trust God's power and ability to take care of things more than he trusted his own ability to control the details of his life. To experience the power of God in his life, he had to throw down that staff and relinquish control. So he does. God asks him to throw down his staff, this key to his livelihood, and Moses throws it down. And it's funny what happens next. Let's take a look. Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. So the staff miraculously turns into a snake, and Moses' response is basically to freak out and run away. And like, if I'm honest with you, that's pretty relatable to me, because if anything on this stage turns into a snake this morning, you all are on your own for the rest of the gathering, because I am out of there. But check out what happens next. Then the Lord told him, reach out and grab its tail. If I'm Moses, this is when I'm cycling back to that conversation about, I think you have the wrong guy. Like, this is not for me. But Moses does it. He reaches out and he grabs his tail, and it turns back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. Perform this sign, the Lord told him. Then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, really has appeared to you. And from then on, nobody referred to it as Moses' shepherd's staff anymore. It was known as God's staff. And God used that staff in amazing ways throughout Moses' life as he went on to lead the people of God out of slavery and into the promised land. But first, Moses had to embrace the truth that there is a good God who is always present and at work in his life. A God who cares more about Moses and his sheep and all the other details of his life more than Moses ever could. Because he had encountered a God like that, because Moses had spent time with a God who loved him and cared about all the details of his life, he was able to begin to relinquish control. And as a result, he got to experience the life God had for him. And the same is true for us. If we're going to let go of trying to control the people in our lives, we've got to start by remembering who God is. We've got to start by remembering the good news that God cares more about everything in our life and our relationships than we do. All of it. And he's a good God who is always at work, which means we get to trust him to work in the lives of the people we love, too. And when we spend time with a God like this, and when our hearts begin to experience that kind of goodness and love and freedom, it gets easier and easier to let go of our grip on control and begin to trust God to work in our relationships and in us. Because we know we can trust him. We can trust him. We get to say to God, God, this person in my life, they're not mine to control. Yes, it's my spouse, but they're not mine to control. Yeah, you gave me these kids, and you've called me to raise and guide them, but you didn't give them to me so I could control them. They're my family. They're my parents, siblings, friends, coworkers, but I can trust you to work in them and to work in these relationships. Instead of relying on my own abilities to pull strings or push buttons to try to get what I need out of other people. Practicing the art of letting go is a daily invitation from God. It's a daily invitation to surrender your desire for control so you can embrace God's dream for your life and your relationships. And like that old game show, God says to us, let's make a deal. Let's make a deal. You let go of the control you've been holding on to, And I promise I will not let you get zonked. I have good things in store for you and for the people that you love, and you can trust me. And we've had a challenge for you guys every week of this series. And we have a big challenge for you this week that I think is a really great one to end on. We challenge you to surrender control. Surrender control of your life and relationships to a good and loving God who is always present and at work. So I want you to think about that now. Like, what is it that's in your hand that you've been clinging to? What areas of your life have you been using to try to control other people? Would you begin to practice letting go of that today so that you can trust God to lead you in new and better directions in your relationships? I'm going to give us all a little bit of time to reflect on that in just a few moments, and we're going to end our gathering with communion. So if you came in and you did not get one of these little communion cups, if you'll just raise your hand where you're at, somebody from our VIP team will bring one to you, and you can go ahead and get those ready. Heads up, they're a little tricky. You got like 2 films here. You got to open the top one first, and then the bottom one. Real quick, I just want to go over like why we practice communion. Of course, if you're online, grab your elements as well. We'd love to have you join us in this. One of the reasons that we practice communion together is because Jesus did it. And we talk a lot about following the example of Jesus. I want to read from the first account of communion that we have in Luke. It says, "After taking the bread and giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, 'This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' And in the same way, he took the cup after the meal and said, 'This cup is the new covenant by my blood, which is poured out for you.'" I want you to just hold on to those for a little bit. That's the other reason that we practice communion together. It helps us remember who God is. Helps us remember what he's done for us, all we've received in relationship with him. Remembering who Jesus is key if we're going to start letting go of control in our relationships. Because when we remember who Jesus is and what he's done, we don't have to strive or make things happen or control things in our life and our relationship. We can lean into what Jesus has already done. And we can let go, and we can begin to say yes to a life of learning from him how to live and love the way he did. So I want you guys to close your eyes now. And I want you to take a few moments to just talk to God and get honest with yourself and with him about what you need to let go of today. And then I want you to ask for his help in practicing the art of letting go of control. And when you're ready, after you've had a chance to talk to him about this, I want you to take the elements on your own as a way of saying yes to Jesus' invitation to learn from him a new way of being in your relationships. And then I'll come back and close us in prayer. held on to control instead of trusting you. Or maybe we've tried to control or manipulate the people we love instead of just loving them. I pray that today you would begin to awaken our awareness of when control is popping up in our lives. And that you would help us to just start to let go. Start to practice trusting you to work in our relationships instead of trying to maneuver and manipulate things to get what we want. Father, thank you for setting an example, for showing us what it looked like to have authentic, life-giving relationships in Jesus. And help us to daily say yes to his invitation to spend time with him, to learn from him how to live and love the way you do. We're thankful. In your name, amen. That was a heavy one, guys. I know that. Thanks for sticking with me on that. And I pray that this week, no matter what you're facing, or no matter what feels off in your relationships, you just practice that. Maybe just take a few breaths and practice actually physically letting go of your grip, letting go of where you're holding tension or stress in your body so that you can trust God and remember that he is at work all the time in all of your life. Okay, now, of course, next week, as I've already said, no gatherings in here, so we will not see you back next week, but we will see you in 2 weeks at our Farmington facility for Concert with a Cause. Can't wait to see you there. It's going to be a great time. You guys have a great week. Look for the opportunity to notice God at work around you.